Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Just Mets podcast, presented by the Believe Podcast Network. My name is Andrew Claudio. It is good to be back. Shout out to Rich McLeod, who did yeoman's work watching this team, covering this team while I was in Las Vegas for NBA Summer League, and of course in the Javits Center all last weekend for Fanatics Fest. The New York Mets, their season is still very much over. They are now officially they're sellers as we are 11 days out from the deadline. Fun fact, the August 3rd trade deadline is also my birthday. So we'll see what the Mets give me for my birthday this year. Hopefully it's a first base prospect because that position continues to just be dreadful, the rotation that we get. So listen, I wanted to, yes, I'm going to talk about the Milwaukee series and preview the Dodgers series from the weekend. I'll even interact with the chat. I see a couple of people here. What's up, Justin? What's up, Armand? There is a bit of a state of the Mets conversation that I want to have, and I'm actually going to start in a place where I have not started very often when it comes to talking about this team, really for the last month and a half, 2 months, right? I'm going to just talk about a thing that I really can't get upset with David Stearns about. And it's almost we'll start with, here's what you really can't blame David Stearns for. I was very on board with the Freddie Peralta trade. I was very complimentary of the aggressiveness of trading two of your top 5 prospects for a 1-year potential rental in Freddie Peralta, thinking that because of Steve Cohen, you get the guy, you extend him, or you deal with the free agency questions later, knowing that you could be the highest bidder. And man alive, has that just gone awfully. The entire Freddie Peralta experience. This guy had an ERA just above 3.5 in the beginning of June, which was like an underperforming. Like when Rich and I had the conversation about 5-frame Freddie, and we discussed, like, are the expectations on us? Like, were we wrong to expect more because we're so used to DeGrom and Harvey and Scherzer and guys going 7 innings and an ace just being a guy here? Your bullpen has a day off. And you look at the numbers in Milwaukee, and this guy just like was never a 7-inning pitcher, was barely a 6-inning pitcher, but you could always count on him for 5. And now we sit here on July 24th. And Freddie Peralta, I think it's very safe to say he would be their 4th starter. And comparing him to Sean Manaea at the moment, he's pitched like their number 5 starter for a solid month now. Freddie Peralta has an ERA over 5 at this point in the season. I'm trying to get to his numbers now, but man, Freddie Peralta on the season, and it's why I have to go here first, because of course I have smoke for David Stearns. Of course I have smoke for the team, but we're sitting here through 109 Freddie Peralta innings, and he's 5-9 with a 5.01 ERA. And you know, this series against the Brewers, starting with like Mizorowski going his 4 innings of high voltage, empty the tank pitching, and making it look very easy to go through the Mets lineup. And the guy that the Brewers decided, yeah, we don't need you to be our ace anymore. We have this other thing coming instead. They trade Freddie Peralta, and it could not have regressed more. So I feel like that's the biggest thing I want to talk about from the actual baseball that's happened, is like in a season of criticizing the president of baseball operations, and boy, has he deserved the criticism. I can't get on him at all for Freddie Peralta. This is a move I was on board with. This was a move that I celebrated. And you want to talk about reasons why the Mets are where they are right now? One of the biggest is that the guy they got to start opening day is barely a rotation pitcher at the moment, and is probably only getting starts right now because we're 11 days out from hopefully him landing on a new team with some type of return coming back your way. The rest of the series against the Brewers, I mean, look, the Zach Thornton thing is very fun. I'm glad they're continuing to pitch him in this rotation. I don't ever need to see Kodai Senga pitch again. It's one of the reasons why I want Freddie Peralta traded, so it guarantees Thornton with now the C, Zach with the C. stays his way in the rotation for the rest of the season. A 1.93 ERA through 23 and a third innings pitched for Zach Thornton, and a whip under 1. Not really striking out, guys. He's got 17 strikeouts and 23 and a third, but he's only allowed, is this real? Yeah, he's allowed 20 base runners in 23 and a third innings. That's pretty great. I'm here for the soft tossing lefty. I get John Neese vibes. I'll just be completely honest. I think you talk about run prevention, you're going to need a good defense behind him, which is why it was good to see 3 outfielders in the outfield, and AJ Ewing helping him with 2 of his nice plays on Tuesday. But yeah, I'm here for Zach Thornton and the innings that we're getting from him and the performance we've gotten from him. And then on Wednesday, again, I alluded to it. Just it amazes me, and this is where you got to get on the president of baseball operations. Like, the whole season was about run prevention, and we're in late July, and we're still playing guys out of position. Brett Baty's not an outfielder. Brett Baty, I don't even know if he's a first baseman, and we haven't seen that in a while, but he's definitely not an outfielder. And you've got 5 outfielders on the roster: Tyrone Taylor, Luis Robert, Juan Soto, AJ Ewing, Carson Bench. And Brett Baty's in right field for some reason. I know he homered that day, so I'm not really upset with Brett Baty. The bat he's hit better lately, but there's not even a, like, let's showcase him as an outfielder argument, because all you did was continue to prove that he's not an outfielder by making a move like that, by putting him in the field. And it cost Christian Scott, who worked out of a second and third nobody out jam, gets the fly ball from Joey Ortiz, and you don't have a right fielder in right field. It reminds me a lot of JD Davis in 2019. For those who remember, his bat was so good and the National League didn't have the DH. So both he and Dom Smith were hitting so well that the Mets decided, screw outfield defense, we're putting both of them in left field. And they just had the worst left field defense all season. And it cost them a lot, which is why you have 2 guys that had high 800 OPSs that season and are barely like above a 1 or a 2 WAR players, because no matter how good their offense was, their defense kept biting into that because they were negative players playing out of position. I think you're doing the same thing to Brett Baty, unfortunately. Just look, it just never made sense to me, the let's play players out of position plan that they went into the season with, especially when the whole thing was, we can't re-sign blank or keep blank because of run prevention. Well, you haven't done, and that's the funny part about the Brewers series, honestly, is you actually saw what run prevention looks like. You saw in the 8th and 9th inning, like, oh, hard hit ball up the middle, but Terang makes the play, inning over. Last out of the game, first and second. Maybe it's no. So Alvarez gets the single to get the run home, runner on first, and you're staring at Polanco, which I understand Soto, if he needs a day off, he needs a day off. But like, Polanco's at the plate, hits a rope that at least should have extended the game to the left side between short and third. Nope. Joey Ortiz makes the play, game over. Hey, that's a team and a roster that absolutely implements run prevention and that type of plan. And ironically, they have one of the worst first base defenses on the entire sport. Funny how you could still have a good defense without a good defensive first baseman. The juxtaposition of his old team actually having the roster and the game plan that he spoke all about this offseason, and be successful at it and have the best record in baseball to this point. It's just amazing to see. It's ironic to see, I'll say. Then we look ahead to this weekend. I will actually be in the building for Mets-Dodgers tonight. The Mets play the Dodgers for 3 games throughout the weekend. I'm actually curious how many of these games are nationally televised. So tonight is an MLB TV, ESPN Unlimited, which also means it's probably an SNY game. They are on Fox on Saturday, and no, they are not Sunday Night Baseball either. That's another thing I'll say from my time away. Had the chance to listen to Sunday Night Baseball on NBC. Not terrible. Roger Clemens, I hate listening to you. your analysis is not that bad. I will just give you that. They have it's an enjoyable listen so far through a couple of Sunday Night Baseball experiences. Yeah, it's Saturday 7:15, Sunday 1:40. Should mention Alison Trone of WFAN will join me on Sunday for the Sunday show. Rich remains out of town. We've got Sean Manaea against Roki Sasaki. I believe tonight is both fireworks and Japanese Heritage Night. So the Roki Sasaki in the building as the Mets are celebrating Japanese Heritage Night. I wonder if we get Kodai Senga innings. He's been the bulk guy on the other side of or after Manaea in recent starts. Just to celebrate the night. I shouldn't say whatever. Like, of course, we want to celebrate the different heritage nights that they have is the best way possible. Otani's in the building for Japanese Heritage Night. I think they planned that accordingly. We'll see if Otani has a big weekend for the New York against the New York Mets. He's not pitching against the Mets, I will say, but Yamamoto is Yoshinobu Yamamoto is pitching on Saturday against Nolan McLean. In theory, that should be a good matchup. And then on Sunday, you've got good old Freddie Peralta. Which game is the bobblehead day? I know Freddie Peralta this weekend is Freddie Peralta bobblehead weekend. I think it's bobblehead weekend. It's either this weekend or next weekend. But there's a chance he's either going to be like on one of the last weekends he's a Met, we're going to give away Freddie Peralta bobbleheads, or he gets traded the weekend he is no longer a New York Met. Emmett Sheehan is the Sunday starter against the Mets. Look, I picked 1-5 in predictions this week. I would assume that so in order to get to 1-5, they have to get swept this weekend. I would say their best chance at a win is Sunday if Freddie Peralta pitches the way he's supposedly able to. Dodgers are the Dodgers. Like, what am I supposed to say? The Mets are playing two of the best teams in baseball this week. Dodgers are 65-38, one of the best run differentials. They have like 11 pitchers on the IL, which is why Edwin Diaz might be activated for this weekend, but he's barely pitched this season. Would be very funny if the weekend that the Mets play the Dodgers at Citi Field, Edwin Diaz returns to potentially close out a game against the Mets. But like Blake Snell is on the IL, Tyler Glasnow is on the IL, and doesn't matter. Otani's been great. Yamamoto's been great. Yeah. It's the other irony. Kyle Tucker been awful this year. That bidding war. The Mets actually are benefited from losing that bidding war. Like would rather have AJ Ewing from a value standpoint than what Kyle Tucker and what arguably the worst contract in baseball. Doesn't matter. Dodgers are still 65-38, one of the best teams in baseball. Some big picture topics I wanted to get to. So let's start with the deadline, who stays, who goes, and it'll end with Lindor. I think if I had to fully predict what's going to happen at this trade deadline, if I'm looking through like who's most likely to stay, who's most likely to go, there's a lot of bullpen arms. I mean, we talked about Freddie Peralta. I would expect he's not a Met on the other side of August 3rd. I would expect that AJ Minter, Brazaban, Brooks Raley. I'm on the fence about Luke Weaver. Luke Weaver's been awesome. That's just a piece if you actually do intend to contend next year that you want to keep around. But those three guys on 1-year deals, I think you honestly should sell high on Brazaban. Like those three, I think you can guarantee are no longer Mets on the other side of the deadline. So Freddie Peralta, that's 4. Then you go to the catching situation. I'm so mixed on Alvarez and Terrence. I think Terrence is awesome. I think he's the best backup catcher in baseball. I think he's starter value. Like he's a fine 9-hitter. He's going to hit like a 9-hitter for sure. But what he is as a defensive player, I think you need to keep within your organization. Like the example I've always used is the 2018 Red Sox. They won 108 games. had like the best defensive outfield in baseball with Jackie Bradley Jr. and Mookie Betts and Andrew Benintendi. And they had big bats all throughout the lineup with Xander Bogaerts and JD Martinez, Rafael Devers, and the righty that won World Series MVP that hit the 2 home runs in Game 5. I'm blanking on his name. Ended up in Baltimore. But they had all these bats basically and other places that gave you value offensively that you could then be fine with, like a 9-hitter in Sandy Leone that had a 590 OPS that season, or Christian Vasquez batting ninth, right? And it was fine. And so I wonder if that's how you get a Torrens who's like a platinum glove contender. Going to be a Gold Glove contender in the National League this year for sure, because Patrick Bailey, the Giants catcher, got traded to the American League. But yeah, I go back and forth with Torrens. Like, should he just be the starter? He's one of the best defensive catchers. And if Alvarez just continues to not be a good, not even like one of the best, not good defensive catcher, I like that they've DH'd him more. He's not tall enough to be a first baseman, although they don't really have a first baseman of the future on the roster. I wonder if it's like not time to just see what you have in Alvarez and on the market. I mean, like I have wondered if you should trade him now with, him coming up on arbitration pretty soon. It's not a worry that the Mets have to have, because look, like they can afford to pay whatever an arbitration he's going to want. But I've thought about it. I'll tell you that much, of one of their catchers potentially going. I don't know what you're getting for Brett Beatty. I think you're very much selling low on him at this point. But I mean, if Bo Bichette's here for the next 2 years, if this really is a 3-year commitment, as he said, then I don't know that you want to keep Brett Beatty long term. I would suspect. So that then brings up the Bo Bichette conversation. I think similar to the Scherzer trade, because the Mets aren't paying down anybody's big contract, right? They're not going to pay down Bo Bichette's deal so that way they can get more money. But part of the Max Scherzer trade when it happened was that Scherzer had to agree to opt in to his deal with the Rangers. Ironically, they were like, no, we need to make sure you're still here, even though you're low-key washed, if we're going to make this trade, if we're going to trade Luis Angel Acuna for you. I would assume whatever team were to want to trade for Bo Bichette, like say it's the Red Sox, right? Or ironically, say it's the Phillies. They would say, you need to guarantee us that you'll be here the 3 years, like waive your opt-outs. And I think that's how you get any type of value for Bo. And if you're not trading Bo Bichette, then it's Brett Beatty and see what you have. If somebody wants to, he's 2 years. He's going to be arbitration eligible, I believe, this season. So I would assume both of these guys are Mets on the other side of the deadline. And then, like, Tyrone Taylor's a free agent at the end of the year. I think you could get something for him as a fourth outfielder, not something crazy. Luis Robert, my goodness, if you could find somebody that wants Luis Robert, please. Like, it's why I didn't mind him playing over Benj the other day. I showcase him, get him, show that he's healthy, show he could be DH, show that the bat is still there. Get what you can for Luis Robert, so that way we can just get back to this very good outfield on the other side of the All-Star break. Of the trade deadline. Polanco, it's not a 1+1, so it's a guaranteed other season. I think they're kind of stuck with Jorge Polanco. I think you should just make him one of your DHs at this point, and see what you can get from him at the bat. Everybody else, as Chelsea Janice reported, is here to stay, except for one, and that brings me to the Francisco Lindor conversation that has dominated these airwaves and really the Mets conversation over the last month. I am very happy that I was away for most of it, because a lot of it felt repetitive. A lot of it felt very disingenuous. And then a lot of it just felt like this has nothing to do with baseball. You don't like Francisco Lindor. I will just start here. No, I don't think the Mets are going to trade Francisco Lindor. No, I don't think they're shopping Francisco Lindor. I come from the basketball world, right? I remember when Danny Ainge, the owner of the Utah Jazz, not the owner, the president of basketball operations, the decision maker for the Utah Jazz, basically said, like, my guys are available if you give me a crazy offer that guarantees I win the trade. And for the most part, like, never got those offers. Like Lauri Markkanen never got traded because he never got the crazy offer that was sent to him. He did trade Donovan Mitchell when he got a very clear trade offer that guaranteed he won the trade. Same thing went with Rudy Gobert. I'm positive if the Mets got, like, hey, here's a MLB ready pitcher, an MLB ready offensive player, 2 prospects, and will agree to pay some of the deal, they would trade Francisco Lindor. I think the fascinating part about the Lindor conversation for me is that there seems to be this assumption that the Mets aren't trying to contend next season. You know, I think there is a movement within the fan base that thinks we're going full, like, we're going to be the White Sox next year. I know we're going to be pretty bad this year. We're going to lose 90 plus games most likely. But as far as I'm concerned, we're in Juan Soto's prime. You should be trying to win every year, especially when there's 6 playoffs teams. They didn't do it successfully this year, and it should be an indictment on everybody in charge, but they should try to win next year if there's a season. And part of doing that is making sure you have the best players available at each position. And I'm sorry, there isn't an upgrade for Francisco Lindor available to the Mets at this deadline or this offseason. So you're not saying the Mets should get better if you're trading Francisco Lindor. You're saying they should get worse, which, fine. If you think they should go full rebuild, it's why, like, if that's where you're coming from, I actually understand why you might want to trade Francisco Lindor. You don't want them to get better. You want them to get worse, then, you know, eventually get Elian Pena, and you don't want him to one day eventually be the second baseman of the future. You just want the Mets to be worse. And if I'm going to be worse, I should at least watch players that are young, and that's the only way teams can get better. So players are young. I think the Mets want to be good next season, and part of that will involve Francisco Lindor. Has the defense and the bonehead plays and the errors and the forgetting how many outs and, you know, the Mr. Smile of it all. Has it all been frustrating? Yes, absolutely. The last couple games before the All-Star break, really the first couple after, where he made an error, it was just like, all right, buddy, I'm defending you, but what's going on? And then he went to Milwaukee, and really the last day in he went to Milwaukee and the last day in Philadelphia, like, he tore the cover off the ball. I believe he has 9 hits in his last 4 games. Like, he's going to finish the season with an OPS over 800. This is just who Lindor is. He's a good hitter. He's a good baseball player. Might have to start thinking about, like, a position change, maybe some more days DHing at this point in his career. But man alive, he's not a player that is such a toxic asset that you have to trade him as a baseball player. This isn't Marcus Semien that we're talking about, who I believe is washed. I believe the Mets are going to have to make a decision next season, but whether they just buy out and eat the rest of his contract, similar to what they did with Robinson Cano, similar to what they did, similar to what the Yankees did last year with DJ LeMahieu. Like, you're just going to have to make this decision. There is the other side of it, which is why I think it's ironic, and I'm not going to preach because I think there's just been enough of that out there. I'm not going to call you a racist if you treated Francisco Lindor the same way that, and again, it's ironic. This is the same weekend that Carlos Beltran is going into the Hall of Fame with a Mets cap. Like, if you're regurgitating and repeating the same arguments and the same stereotypes that you were saying during the Beltran era, then yeah, there's probably some tones there that need to be examined. I'm not going to fully litigate those. That's between you and your sensibilities. But what I will say is, like, I'm glad that Beltran's going to get to go into the Hall of Fame in a Mets cap. I'm glad he's going to get to, like, have his number retired at the end of the season. And if you read the tea leaves, I'm glad he's going to get a chance to be the Mets manager next season. But it's even more of a reason why I think Lindor, I'm not just rooting for him to finish his contract with the New York Mets, because I want him to go into the Hall of Fame with a Mets cap. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's like on the Barry Larkin track, you know. Um, the other side of the Lindor conversation is just that there's a political side of this, that people don't like him, people don't like his wife, people don't like the politics that he has. And yeah, it works when they're winning and he's playing like an MVP, but when they're on pace for 100 losses or however many they're going to finish with, and like, he disappeared for a month, and there's all the tension in the locker room apparently. Yeah, it can wear on people. Like, what are you smiling about? This has been a miserable season, you know? So look, I'm trying to extend an olive branch and try to understand where people are coming from in their frustrations with Francisco Lindor, and it just seems to be about literally everything but baseball. I think he's going to be a productive baseball player the rest of the season. I think he's going to be a productive Met next season and maybe a year or two after that as well. This guy's contract is going to end when he's 37, not 40, not 42. Like, this guy's going to be at a point where he could probably be a solid second baseman for the last couple of years of his career. I don't want the Mets to trade Francisco Lindor. I think he's like the best shortstop they've ever had. I think he's going to be a very good player for them for way more the rest of his contract than what's left of his contract. So that's where I am on that. Hopefully, I don't even have to say hopefully. They're not going to trade him. They're just not. There's going to be a lot of very upset people that I personally don't pay attention to, but like, there's going to be a vocal minority of the fan base that will wonder why they didn't trade Francisco Lindor, and there's going to be a much smarter part of the fan base that recognizes they're trying to win next year, and he's part of the solution there. And look, the Lindor Soto thing, I'm at the point where I just don't care. Like, read any baseball book about a great team, and there's always, I shouldn't even say baseball. Read any book about a great sports team, and there's a portion of every book, there's a chapter of this tension that existed. Like, go look throughout the 70s Yankees. Like, Reggie Jackson and Thurman Munson hated each other. Reggie Jackson and the manager Billy Martin tried to fight each other, won back-to-back championships, right? Like, even more, like the Shaq and Kobe books that are out there, the Lakers of the 80s, like Magic Johnson feuding with his coach, how long it took before he and Kareem found an understanding. You know, hell, let's bring up the Knicks. Mike Brown and Karl-Anthony Towns feuding all season. All I heard from behind the scenes were the egos and agendas that existed. All goes away if you win, man. It just does. I think if the Mets are winning next season, I think Lindor and Soto will be fine. I don't think there was ever a tension. I keep using the example. Lindor's in his early 30s and a husband, he married with 3 kids, right? Soto's a borderline billionaire in his late 20s that lives in the biggest media market in the world. Like, he's just a different point in his life. They don't have anything in common. There may have been a struggle in the beginning of like, hey, this is Lindor's team, and now the bigger, better player is coming to it. I think they have like a fine working relationship. It's Jeter and A-Rod, just without all the winning that supposedly came with when A-Rod came to play with Jeter. So that's where I'm at. I think there's a lot of work to do this trade deadline, this offseason. I do think they're starting to land, you know, where for those who've watched me forever, you know, I've always landed on like, I'm going to stare at the pitching first. And if the pitching is solid, I think there's something they could build on. If you're telling me the mainstays right now, the positives for next year are Christian Scott, Nolan McLean, Zach Thornton, sign a pitcher, Sean Manaea, and then we'll see what you get from Jonah Tong. We'll see if they can trade for a starter at the deadline, a starter prospect. Yeah, that'll play. You know, that's a start. You're going to need to, I mean, we'll see what the Scooble negotiations, and if the Mets enter that, it would be very against David Stearns to enter the starting pitching competition or bidding war. But I would hope Steve Cohen, who said he's upset, he's dissatisfied, he's disappointed, well, then go get the 2-time Cy Young winner, please. Like, as far as I'm concerned, override your president of baseball operations. I would assume that the Mets need to at least add 1 to 2 starters this offseason. At least one, because you're going to need to replace Freddie Peralta. Okay. Let me go to the chat. Armand's been very talkative, so I want to read some of the questions that he put in here. Thank you, Armand, for the contributions today. I will start here. What will the rotation look like post-trade deadline? McLean, Scott, Thornton, Manaea. So this is where Ernest Dove, friend of the pod, who was here a couple weeks ago, I would ask him about Jonah Tong, if you just want to see what it looks like for a couple months. Ironically, like bullpen day Kodai Senga, maybe you get Tobias Myers in and you just say, hey, work the kinks out. We're going to see what you can be as a long-term opener. You know, can you get through 2 times in the batting order and see what that looks like? I got to be honest, and I just hinted at this, Armand, like the fact that I have those 3 at the top are already reassuring. I have 3 guys that I can watch the rest of the season and see if they can be the foundation of a solid rotation. So, yeah, I'd go those 3 plus Manaea and then a 5th, you know, whatever they do on that 5th day. They're barely watchable as is, so just go watch the Odyssey on that 5th day. Armand with another one. I would only trade Alvy in package for a major league catcher back in return, like Shea Langoliers or Hunter Goodman. Langoliers is more realistic. While I was in Vegas, I actually got to get a good look. What happens in Vegas? I got to take a good look at the Athletics' new stadium. It was always on the way to the Thomas and Mack Arena where the NBA Summer League games were from my hotel. So I always drove past it, or rode past it, I should say, in the Ubers, and it's gonna look beautiful. I can't believe they're actually putting a baseball team in Vegas. I mean, you haven't experienced heat like that until you've actually like tried to walk to a car in 110 degrees of dry heat. I know they said the stadium's supposed to be like climate controlled. You know, it's not going to be a closed stadium. It's going to be an open stadium, but like we'll have air conditioning. I just couldn't imagine I couldn't imagine watching a baseball game and feeling any hint of that heat, which is why, like, for years, the Mets minor league team was in Vegas, and now actually being in Vegas the last 3 years for Summer League, I can't believe that there's baseball played in Vegas. Like, there's still a minor league team there. I can't believe it. It's just ridiculous. I couldn't. It's 110 degrees in July. I don't get it. Good luck to the A's. And yeah, to answer your question, Armand, I would love Shea Langoliers. I will say, I found the move that would get me to forgive David Stearns for literally everything, forever, right? Pete Alonso, not even really like upset about the Diaz or the Nimmo or the McNeil trades. It's really just the Alonso never making him an offer and then not really replacing him with a first baseman. It's like, oh, here's a guy that never played first base before. However, Nick Kurtz has said he's not going to sign a long-term deal with the Sacramento Athletics of soon-to-be Vegas. If there is any Nick Kurtz trade that the Mets could potentially pull off, I'll forgive everything. Like, that's what the Braves would do. Like when they traded for Olsen, right? Like, they replaced their longtime first baseman and playoff hero. Now, Freddie Freeman's a future Hall of Famer, but like with Olsen, right? If you do the same thing, but with Nick Kurtz, and I get to watch Nick Kurtz bat next to Juan Soto in the lineup for the next 10 years because you're going to extend him, I'll forgive everything. Forgive everything. Like, so much, man. Look, I think they need a first baseman and a catcher if you're going to trade Alvarez. They need a first baseman, and if you're going to trade Alvarez, you need a catcher. The catching prospects aren't there. So I don't disagree. I would prefer Langoliers, obviously, over Goodman, although I think Goodman is very good as well. And then last one from Armand. Should Lindor move to second base sooner? Should Lindor and management have that talk this offseason? I'd be open to it. I know his range, I'll do the baseball savant thing. Look, I'll just start with the eye test. A lot of his errors seem to be on the throw. And if that's because he isn't strong enough at this point in his career to make the throw more consistently, yeah, I'm about it. Ironically, he may have had a chemistry with the former Mets first baseman that saved a lot of his errors, that he just basically, he knew I just got to throw it low. And if I throw it low, Pete will pick everything. And now he's got like the rotation of ass at first base and like doesn't have that security anymore. Having said that, if I go to his Savant page, I'll be able to see what his range looks like. So Francisco Lindor, baseball Savant page. This is how a lot of us do our analysis these days. Francisco Lindor for range is still at 75. So 75th percentile, which is very good. Small sample size is only like 40 plus games, but and it also backs up the eye test. The arm strength is what we're looking at. He's at 28th percentile arm rate at arm strength. So Armand, to translate that for those who don't know what I'm talking about, the range is still there to play shortstop. The arm is no longer there to play shortstop. The problem with what you're suggesting is that they just traded for a second baseman. Now, as I said earlier, think they're going to have to make a decision with Simeon at some point in 2027. That's not me like projecting something they're going to have to like that's been talked about, that's been rumored. I'm just saying like Simeon's like he's cooked. Like you're gonna have to make a Robinson Cano decision with Marcus Simeon next season. I predict that's going to happen, which would then mean that if you're moving Lindor to second base, who's the shortstop? Which I don't think Mauricio is a shortstop of the future. I don't think Elian Pena is going to be ready to be the shortstop, the everyday shortstop next season. All of the suggestions that the very, very ignorant people are saying the Mets should just trade Lindor for are not good ones. So then if you're suddenly in the shortstop market, then it becomes a very fun conversation of let's still keep Lindor, but also go get those backup shortstop options. It opens up another can of worms because you're now like your entire middle infield is a question. I think that at some point in the near future, though, to your point, they're gonna have to have a conversation with Lindor. They did it with Nimmo. Once the range went away in 2023, they said to him like, "You're not really a center fielder anymore." Maybe we're at that point with Lindor. Like the range is still there, the arm isn't. So maybe he's just like very clearly transitioning to be a second baseman, and that's how he continues his career with the Mets as a productive, still middle infielder, but plays second instead. Shout out to my buddy Matty Heads, who I just gotta say, shout out to spent Fanatics Fest experiencing Fanatics Fest the way it's supposed to. The amount of pictures I got texted to me that were like, here's me with Mike Piazza, here's me with David Wright, here's me with Jose Reyes. I was so jealous like throughout the entire experience because I was working, right? Like I know it's creating content, so it's not real work. It's fun. Like it's a great job, right? But I don't really get to enjoy Fanatics Fest. I got my steps in, that's for sure. But I would get a text every like 20 minutes or to an hour of like, here's me with one of your favorite Mets with Carlos Beltran, right? So shout out to Matt, who absolutely took advantage of the opportunities that were there at Fanatics Fest. I know they weren't cheap, but they were worth it for sure. He says, if David Stearns somehow got Nick Kurtz and or Langoliers, I would give David Stearns some grace. Thank you for giving him some grace. That's so funny. I still don't think I would trust him completely, but that would get me to leave him alone for a bit. That's all I'm talking about. If the replacement of Pete Alonso was not supposed to be a 1-year thing, it's a eventual thing, and it's eventually. Look, I'm very high on Nick Kurtz. I think he's got, my goodness, I don't even know what the modern day comp is, because I think he can be like Jim Thome, but better. Like that's a 50 home run hitter in consistently in the majors throughout his prime. And if you're just going to come here and mash for the foreseeable future, I'm very high on Nick Kurtz. That's just me. I think a lot of people are for sure, but I just, man, the way that Schwarber is just like a consistent 900 plus OPS guy throughout his 30s, I think that's what you're staring at with Nick Kurtz. I think that's what you're staring at if you get a guy like that. So yeah, if that ends up being like a pivot that the Mets go to, yeah, I'm here for it. And then the last thing, I'll just put this up there. He's got a lot of damage to undo. That's why I'm very curious to see what the ballpark is like tonight. The Mets will play their first home game at Citi Field tonight since the All-Star break, and more specifically, since they lost the last game before the All-Star break, where Francisco Lindor made a pretty atrocious error that cost them a game right before the All-Star break. I'm looking forward to seeing it. That's for sure. I'm looking forward to seeing what the crowd is like, being in the ballpark. Probably my last of a couple trips. There's some big nights. I'm considering going there for the celebration of the 86 team, for the Beltran number retirement, for the there's a Monday in September where I'm pretty sure I'll be there at least for half the game when the Mets play the Orioles and welcome back Pete Alonso. So we'll see. So I should actually put this up on the screen. Born Mets fan 86. We as fans need to be realistic. We don't have the trade chips to acquire a Kurtz. So you're 100% right. We don't have the farm system right now. This is why I think this deadline is important. If you get the chips, and then this is an off-season conversation because Nick Kurtz will be continue to be closer to arbitration. Like we're talking about a guy with 5 years of control. So no, it's not going to be easy to get Nick Kurtz. But yeah, I am. Yeah, again, 5 years of control. It'd be ridiculous. They don't have the chips to get Nick Kurtz. You would have to basically trade the farm for him. I'm saying it's worth it. I'm also just not putting anything past the financial restraints that exist in Sacramento / Las Vegas. But for real, I agree with you. I think there is a world of the Mets could be the team that makes the Nick Kurtz trade. In the meantime, I think they're going to have to be more realistic about their first base options, which hopefully means a first baseman, a person that's played first base before. Okay, that is your midweek show. Thank you for tuning in. I mentioned I'll be back on Sunday after the Dodgers series with Al Centrone of WFAN. Rich will be back, I believe, next weekend is when he'll be back. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you dug the show, please head over to Apple or Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating and a review. If you're watching this video, like it. Remember to subscribe to the channel. As I mentioned, I'll be back on Sunday, so I'll speak with you then. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Let's go Mets, in the words of the immortal Gary Cohen. We are out of here.